Hello, and welcome to my channel, where I explore the fascinating world of true crime and literature. Today, I'm going to summarize one of the most groundbreaking and influential books of the 20th century, In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. But before I begin, please make sure to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and hit the bell icon to get notified whenever I upload a new video. And if you enjoy my content, please consider supporting me on Patreon, where you can get access to exclusive perks and rewards. So, what is In Cold Blood about? And why is it so important and popular? Well, In Cold Blood is not just a book. It is a new form of journalism that is referred to as a non-fiction novel, which tells, as if it were a novel, the true story of how Dick Hickok and Perry Smith conspired, prepared, and killed the Clotter family in rural Kansas in the fall of 1959, and what it took for the police to catch them so they could be brought to justice by hanging in 1965. In Cold Blood is a book that combines the elements of fiction and non-fiction, such as plot, character, dialogue, and setting, with meticulous research and factual accuracy. It is a book that explores the themes of violence, justice, morality, and the American dream. It is a book that exposes the dark side of human nature, and the complex relationship between the killers and the victims, the law and the society, and the writer and the reader. It is a book that has inspired countless writers, filmmakers, and artists, and that has changed the way we think about crime and literature. In Cold Blood was written by Truman Capote, one of the most celebrated and controversial writers of his time, who was born in 1924 and died in 1984. He wrote several novels, short stories, essays, and screenplays, such as Breakfast at Tiffany's, The Grass Harp, and A Christmas Memory. He was also a famous socialite, who mingled with celebrities, politicians, and royalty. He was known for his flamboyant style, his witty remarks, and his troubled personal life. He published In Cold Blood in 1966, after spending 6 years researching and writing the book. He was fascinated by the news of the Clotter murders, which he read in the New York Times in 1959. He decided to travel to Kansas, accompanied by his childhood friend and fellow writer, Harper Lee, who later wrote To Kill a Mockingbird. He interviewed hundreds of people, including the killers, the investigators, the witnesses, and the townspeople. He also collected thousands of pages of documents, such as police reports, court transcripts, and personal letters. He claimed that he had a photographic memory, and that he did not use any notes or tapes while writing the book. He also claimed that he had invented a new genre, the non-fiction novel, which he defined as a narrative form that employed all the techniques of fictional art but was nevertheless immaculately factual. The book is divided into 4 parts, each containing several chapters, that follow the chronological order of the events, from the day before the murders to the day of the executions. The book also switches between the perspectives of the killers and the victims, the hunters and the hunted, creating a suspenseful and dramatic narrative. The book begins and ends with a description of the landscape of Kansas, creating a contrast between the beauty and the horror of the story. The book is set in the late 1950s and early 1960s, when America was undergoing social and cultural changes, such as the Civil Rights Movement, the Cold War, and the rise of consumerism. The book also reflects the values and the conflicts of the time, such as the rural and the urban, the rich and the poor, the traditional and the modern, and the innocent and the guilty. The main characters of the book are Dick Hickok, a 28-year-old ex-convict, who is the mastermind behind the plan to rob and kill the Clotters. He is a charming and cunning man, who has a history of fraud and theft. He is also a pathological liar, a sexual predator, and a sociopath. He has a wife and 3 children, whom he abandoned. He met Perry Smith in prison, and became his partner in crime. Perry Smith, a 31-year-old ex-convict, who is the accomplice and the triggerman of the Clotter murders. He is a sensitive and artistic man, who has a passion for music, literature, and nature. He is also a tormented and violent man, who has a history of abuse and trauma. He suffered a motorcycle accident, which left him with chronic pain and a deformed body. He has a dysfunctional family, whom he despised. He met Dick Hickok in prison, and became his friend and follower. Herbert Clutter, a 48-year-old farmer and rancher, who is the patriarch and the victim of the Clutter family. He is a successful and respected man, who has built a prosperous and happy life for himself and his family. He is also a devout and generous man, who is active in his community and his church. He has a wife and 4 children, 2 of whom live away from home. He was killed by a shotgun blast to the face, while bound and gagged in his basement. Bonnie Clutter, a 45-year-old housewife and mother, who is the matriarch and the victim of the Clutter family. She is a beautiful and gentle woman, who suffers from depression and anxiety. She is also a loving and devoted woman, who cares for her husband and her children. She has a history of mental breakdowns and hospitalizations, which have affected her self-esteem and her social life. She was killed by a shotgun blast to the head, while bound and gagged in her bedroom. Nancy Clutter, a 16-year-old high school student, who is the daughter and the victim of the Clutter family. She is a bright and popular girl, who excels in school and extracurricular activities. She is also a kind and helpful girl, who assists her mother and her neighbors. She has a boyfriend, Bobby Rupp, whom she loves and plans to marry. She was killed by a shotgun blast to the head, while bound and gagged in her bedroom. Kenyon Clutter, a 15-year-old high school student, who is the son and the victim of the Clutter family. He is a smart and shy boy, who enjoys science and carpentry. He is also a friendly and polite boy, who gets along with his sister and his peers. He has a pet squirrel, whom he keeps in a cage. He was killed by a shotgun blast to the face, while bound and gagged in the basement. Alvin Dewey, a 47-year-old agent of the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, KBI, who is the lead investigator of the Clutter case. He is a dedicated and experienced man, who has a reputation for solving difficult cases. He is also a compassionate and honorable man, who is personally affected by the murders. He has a wife and 2 sons, whom he loves and supports. He spent 6 years pursuing and prosecuting the killers, until he sees them hanged. The plot of the book is as follows. The book begins with a description of the Clutter family and their farm in Holcomb, Kansas, on November 14, 1959. The Clutters are preparing for a normal day, unaware of the danger that awaits them. On the same day, Dick Hickok and Perry Smith are driving from Olathe, Kansas, to Holcomb, armed with a shotgun and a knife. They are following a tip from a former cellmate, Floyd Wells, who told them that Herb Clutter kept a large amount of cash in a safe at his home. They plan to rob and kill the Clutters, and leave no witnesses. The book then alternates between the perspectives of the Clutters and the killers, as they go about their activities on that day and night. The Clutters attend church, visit friends, and bake pies. The killers buy supplies, eat at a diner, and check into a motel. The book also introduces some of the secondary characters, such as the Clutters' neighbors, friends, and relatives, and the killers' families, acquaintances, and enemies. The book also provides some background information on the Clutters and the killers, such as their personalities, histories, and motivations. The book then describes the events of the night of November 15, 1959, when the killers enter the Clutter home around midnight, and murder the 4 family members in cold blood. The book details the brutal and senseless nature of the crime, and the shock and horror of the discovery the next morning, by 2 of Nancy's friends. The book also depicts the reactions of the community, the media, and the authorities, who are stunned and outraged by the murders. The book also follows the escape and the movements of the killers, who flee to Kansas City, where they dispose of the evidence and write bad checks. The book then chronicles the investigation of the Clutter case, led by Alvin Dewey and his team of KBI agents. The book shows the difficulties and the frustrations of the investigation, which is hampered by the lack of clues, leads, and suspects. The book also reveals the clues and the leads that eventually lead to the identification and the capture of the killers, such as the footprints, the tire tracks, the shotgun shells, the rope, the tape, and the testimony of Floyd Wells. The book also tracks the movements and the activities of the killers, who travel across the country, committing more crimes and meeting various people, such as hitchhikers, prostitutes, and ex-convicts. The book then describes the arrest and the interrogation of the killers, who are caught in Las Vegas, Nevada, on December 30, 1959, after a tip from a friend of Dick Hickok. The book details the confession and the cooperation of the killers, who admit to the Clutter murders, and provide a detailed account of their motives and actions. The book also depicts the reactions and the emotions of the killers, who show different degrees of remorse, guilt, and defiance. The book also portrays the interactions and the conflicts between the killers and the investigators, who try to understand and to judge them. The book then narrates the trial and the appeal of the killers, who are extradited to Kansas, and face the death penalty. The book illustrates the legal and the ethical issues of the case, such as the insanity plea, the role of the media, and the public opinion. The book also explores the personalities and the backgrounds of the killers, who reveal their childhoods, their families, their dreams, and their fears. The book also examines the relationship and the bond between the killers, who depend on each other for support and comfort. The book also introduces some of the secondary characters, such as the lawyers, the judges, the journalists, and the witnesses, who are involved in the case. The book then concludes with the execution and the aftermath of the killers, who are hanged at the Kansas State Penitentiary in Lansing, Kansas, on April 14, 1965, after several delays and appeals. The book depicts the final moments and the thoughts of the killers, who face death with different attitudes and expressions. The book also shows the impact and the consequences of the case on the lives and the minds of the people who were affected by it, such as the investigators, the survivors, the friends, and the writer himself. The book also ends with a description of the landscape of Kansas, creating a contrast between the beauty and the horror of the story. And that's the end of the summary of In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. I hope you enjoyed this video, and that you learned some valuable lessons and insights that you can apply to your own life. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up, and share it with your friends. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below, and I'll try to answer them as soon as possible. And don't forget to check out my other videos, where I summarize other great books on true crime and literature. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.